Welcome to Politics Unusual. I'm Morgan McKay. This week is all about policy. First up, can the MTA buses really be free and fast? We're going to bring in our panel of experts to weigh in on the issue. Then we're sitting down with State Senator Andrew Gounardes, who's going to discuss a highly watched bill that would regulate the artificial intelligence industry. And then we're taking a look at the runoff election for mayor in Jersey City. But first, Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani ran on a message that he can make buses fast and free. But how feasible is this policy idea? So joining us now are two of the city's best transit reporters, Clayton Guse, who is an editor at WNYC Gothamist and a co-writer of On the Way, which is a weekly transportation-focused newsletter, and Dave Colon, a top transit reporter at Streets Blog. Thank you guys so much for being here. So two of the best minds on transit here. So we're going to start first with, can buses be free? Now, Mamdani's team says it's going to cost about $700 million. The MTA is like, no way. That's going to cost probably upwards of $1 billion in a few years. What say you guys?
The big problem is filling this budget hole. The MTA doesn't really like giving away money. They're constantly crying poor. They're constantly saying they need to pay for things. And the big thing about this is if Zohran Mamdani and his new team and the incoming administration and the new city council finds a way to fill that budget gap, which is going to be at least $700 million by most estimates, then the MTA is still going to need to find a way to pay their bus drivers, pay their mechanics, figure out how to put in and fill this service. There are other routes that he could take without completely making buses free. The city has an existing program called Fair Fares that gives low-income residents half-priced fares. They could expand that. That's a mechanism they could do it. But getting the buses to be completely free will not only require a big approval and a budget item from the city council, but it will require the MTA board saying we're going to give up the fares, and that's something that they've indicated they're not going to do.
So there's another component as well. I hear from a lot of people when they hear free buses. It's, what about the homeless people? Will you have homeless encampments on the buses? Would there have to be something specifically in a provision if you provide free buses that says you can't ride the bus forever as, make this your home sort of a thing?
I mean, there are already kind of rules against that. And we saw buses go free during for 6 months during the COVID pandemic in 2020, right? It was this big thing to keep, let people only go through the back door, not pay the fares so that to keep drivers safe from the virus and transit workers safe from the virus. And you didn't necessarily see buses turn into a homeless encampment. Obviously, ridership was much lower. So you didn't really see these patterns, but there are already rules against, loitering or spending too much time on buses. You have to get off at the end of the line. So those provisions are kind of already in place. And I don't think you're going to see people turning to the bus any more than they do anywhere else is in the public sphere if they're seeking shelter.
Now, some people also are predicting that if you have a free bus, more people are going to ride the bus. And if you look at Mamdani's own free bus pilot program, there was a 30 to 40% increased ridership during that time. Now, do you think this could also add on to the cost of just the wear and tear of buses?
That's what Jano said. He said, oh, I'll have to get new buses, I'll have to get new depots, I'll have to get this, that, and the other thing. Maybe, but I don't know that there's such a bad thing if more people are riding the bus. You certainly can consider the idea that right now, bus ridership hasn't necessarily come back to pre-pandemic levels, at least paid bus ridership. By the MTA's estimates, maybe if you think about things with fare evasion too, there are the same amount of people riding the bus, but at least on the initial, when things start, I don't know that the MTA would have to immediately go out and go, okay, we need 1,000 more buses.
And speaking of increased ridership, this brings us to if buses can be fast. Some people say if there's more people riding, that means more stops. So what do you guys think about, could buses be faster if you do have if they're also free and you have that increased ridership?
Yeah, I mean, there's really three. There's a key component of Mamdani's plan is saying, oh, buses are so slow because people are stopping and paying. They have to beep, beep, beep. And yeah, sure, but that's not really the key metric by way buses are made faster. There's really three primary things. It's giving them priority on the streets. Trolleys used to have priority on the streets. We rip them up, replace them with buses. They move slow, they're stuff in traffic. So adding bus lanes, dedicated bus lanes, and enforcing those bus lanes, it's transit signal priority. That's when your stoplights automatically turn green when a bus approaches. Right now, the city stoplights are really designed to move vehicles, not prioritize people. You're on a bus with 40 people. It can be frustrating when you're watching just a handful of cars go by. You know, like we're way more people than are in those cars. And then really, those are under the control of the city. The part that's under the control of the MTA, the state-run MTA, is the frequency of service. And that's where the really rubber hits the road, so to speak, where if you're going to increase bus speeds, you're also going to want to increase service. That requires drivers, that requires mechanics, that requires dispatchers. That requires a lot of annualized money that might, make this cost much more than $700 million.
Well, and the other part proposal that I've heard for this section is that they would try to maybe move the bus lanes to the middle and then create a pedestrian island in the middle to make it faster for people to go in and out of buses, and then the buses can move in and out faster in that middle lane and not be blocked by double parked cars. But that would take so long, right, to build out and change the city's infrastructure like this?
Well, the city is actually working on that right now on Flatbush Avenue. There's going to be a bus lane that goes from about 4th Avenue all the way up to near Grand Army Plaza, and they're going to be building these pedestrian islands. And that's going to be happening early next year through about the summer. It takes a little bit of time, sure, but I don't think that that's something that the city should shy away from, whether or not you're making buses free. It's something that, as it helps speed up boarding, it helps give a really specific space for the buses to be, and you can then put better amenities for people, better shelters for people to stand there. You can obviously move to things like all-door boarding, as Clayton was talking about, people tapping on. You can get in the back door more easily. So that, I don't think, is something that would be a reason not to build those.
And does it have to be that challenging?
Yeah.
In New York, kind of. We've come to accept that we can't build anything here. We've come to accept that we have to study everything for 6 years and study it to death, and nothing ever happens. Now, Mamdani's promised to break through some of those log jams, but the reality of politics can be challenging. Former Mayor Bill de Blasio, he came in and said, we're going to do Vision Zero. We're going to make the streets a lot safer, build bike lanes, build all these pedestrian plazas. And once the reality of politics started to set in, people started yapping, people started chirping, saying, I don't want to lose parking. He really started to scale back some of those proposals. So it's really how much of a commitment Mamdani is going to have to his principles and navigating this political structure. Because every day you're cutting deals as a mayor, and it's not easy.
Now, the New York Times had an opinion piece recently that said that a way to pay for maybe free buses is to create, instead of having free parking, make it paid parking, which I could see just a huge uproar from all the drivers in New York City. But is that something that would even be possible? Is that even something that would be an option?
Sure. It's a great policy idea.
That would solve a big problem in making buses free, which is that much of the MTA's fare revenue backs bonds. It backs loans that it takes to build, it finances construction projects and pays it off over time with its bonds. It's a holy covenant. It has been for a century in New York. And so if they take away fare revenue, they would need approval from the bondholders who are going to say, where are you going to replace the money from? We don't want an IOU from the city or the state. So that would provide a replacement revenue stream.
Mamdani likes to say it's a matter of will. So I guess in your guys' expert opinion, can buses be both fast and free? Is it a matter of will, or is it something that's at least probably not possible for the next 4 years, Mamdani's first term?
Yeah, I think making buses fast is perfectly reasonable. Making them free is possible. It's a matter if he wants to use his political firepower on that. It's a matter if he wants to use so much of the city budget on that, or whether he can use that elsewhere. I think that there is a real possibility he can make them free or substantially cheaper for low-income New Yorkers, and that would accomplish a lot of his policy goal, but not entirely everything he promised in the campaign.
Yeah, I think that it would be a way to look at it is one thing is not entirely in his hands, and that's the free aspect. It's going to require a bunch of going back and forth in Albany. It's going to require a bunch of revenue. The fast is extremely in his hands, and that's something that he should be judged on as the year goes on. There's things that he has to do to make that possible, but it's something that also the mayor has so much control of the streets that he can really just put somebody in charge of the DOT, put somebody as a deputy mayor for operations and say, this is what we're here to do, so go out and do it.
Yeah, it's 8 miles an hour right now is the average speed. That's a brisk jog. It's not exactly a vote of confidence in this city.
Well, I know you two will have your eyes on this issue as the year goes on, and so I'll be watching and reading your guys' work. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate coming on here and talking about this important issue. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Morgan.
Coming up next, a bill that's drawing national attention. New York State Senator Andrew Gounardes is joining us to discuss the RAISE Act, which is currently waiting for the governor's signature. Welcome back to Politics Unusual. Earlier this year, the state legislature passed the Responsible AI Safety and Education Act, otherwise known as the RAISE Act. This bill would require large artificial intelligence companies to publish safety and risk protocols and disclose serious safety incidents. But the bill is receiving some pushback as it waits for Governor Hochul's signature. So joining us now is State Senator Andrew Gounardes. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you.
So there's so many details in this bill, so we're going to break down each part. So first, help explain the requirement for these companies to create and publish security protocols.
So the premise of this bill is really simple. We're trying to focus on the most powerful AI machines being developed, the ones that are designed to approximate human intelligence, right? The ones that have a demonstrated risk of creating significant harm, like biohazards or significant financial harm or economic harm. And we want to put guardrails in place because that's what the experts who design these models, the theorists who work on AI, some of the most cited AI theorists in the history of computer science, and even some of the CEOs of these companies themselves have all said, as we're developing these models, we need to do them with safety protocols in place, and that should be standardized. And so we're trying to step in with the RAISE Act to say, okay, here are the guardrails that you should be developing these models around.
Exactly. And companies have to publish these safety protocols. And if they don't, they're going to be subject to penalties up to $30 million. Now, the bill also requires these companies to implement safeguards to prevent these AI models from engaging in what you guys call critical harm, like assisting in the creation of chemical weapons. Yep. Help explain what this critical harm component is.
So again, if you're paying attention to what's happening in AI, which is the fastest developing technology in the history of the world, I mean, every week it's growing by leaps and bounds. There are stories coming out in the press about AI models in controlled environments, manipulating human users to commit crimes, to lie to human users, to be able to recreate biological or chemical weapons in a controlled setting. That's pretty scary stuff. Now imagine that getting into the hands of someone who is intent on doing harm to other people, right? So the goal here is to put safeguards in place and these protocols in place so that these models cannot develop or take those steps. And if they do somehow take those steps, we have a safeguard in order to stop it from happening, as well as disclose that it in fact happened so we can study what went wrong and how to fix it.
Exactly. And you guys describe critical harm as death or serious injury of 100 people or at least $1 billion in damages. Really incredible critical harm here. So the RAISE Act would also require AI companies to disclose notable safety incidents. So if a model is stolen in a cyber attack, for example, help explain what your thought process was behind this.
Again, this is the most powerful technology created in the history of the world. It has a demonstrated ability to cause those critical harms, that significant harm. We need to know, society needs to know, government needs to know if one of these models gets into the wrong hands, if one of these models does something that is not anticipated and actually leads to a significant harm. We need to know so we can fix it, or we can stop it, or we can catch it. You don't want an AI model going into the hands of, foreign enemies of this country with the ability to create biological weapons. I mean, how terrifying would that be? This is a different type of scale of risk than we've ever had to contemplate before. So the best answer and the best way to keep ourselves safe in those conditions is to have full transparency and accountability.
So there's been some pushback from some AI companies that are saying they want a more uniform national approach. They're saying it's hard to differentiate between, for example, the California laws and the New York Now laws. Well, it still needs to be signed by Governor Kathy Hochul. But, what do you think about maybe creating a more uniform approach? Should there be something happening on the federal level?
That would be great. But the federal government is broken and has demonstrated a complete inability to get its act together, A, to understand this technology, and B, to even think about regulating it. The analogy I give is in the social media context. We talk so much about protecting kids on the internet. The last time Congress passed a law to protect kids on the internet was 1998. before smartphones, before Facebook, before Instagram, before Twitter, before the modern society we have today with social media and all the harms it's created. We're dealing with a law from 30 years ago. I have no confidence that Congress can get their act together, which is why states are trying to step up to take the lead. And in fact, when you look at what California just passed and you look at the RAISE Act, they are similar enough that it can become the de facto national standard by which all companies can operate under without having to restrict the ability of states to take the lead in these types of circumstances.
Now, something else that's been brought up by some of these companies is that they're saying that this could limit the expansion of AI, and even the Trump administration has looked at potentially limiting state regulations on AI. I think they've since backed away from that proposal. However, do you think that having these state-level regulations will impact the U.S.'s ability to stay at the top of this AI race?
I absolutely do not. What we're talking about here is we're talking about putting a seatbelt into a Lamborghini. We're talking about putting an airbag into a Ferrari. I don't think any of these big tech CEOs or any of these venture capitalists who are fighting us tooth and nail on the RAISE Act would put their children in a vehicle that has that much power and that much ability without having safety guardrails in place. Like, they just wouldn't. Nor should they expect us to do the same. We are talking about common sense guardrails that are designed to apply to the largest and most powerful AI models ever being developed, and this will allow them to be developed safely, not in a way that can lead to serious harm to people.
Exactly. Well, the bill still has to be signed by Governor Kathy Hochul, but thank you so much for coming on here and explaining that.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you,
Thank you, Morgan.
Still to come, should outdoor dining be year-round in New York City? We're getting local reaction next. Plus, Jersey City has a brand new mayor. We have reaction from this week's runoff election. A few extra weeks, but Jersey City finally has a new mayor. Councilman James Solomon easily defeated former New Jersey Governor Jim McGreevey in a runoff election this past week. Solomon ran on a platform of making New Jersey's second largest city more affordable. He vowed to take on developers and special interests, invest in public safety, and work with the Board of Education to improve the city's schools.
Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for this honor, and know that each and every day I'm going to work to put the residents of this city first.
We have to get back to understanding that we have so much more in common as a people, so much more in common as a nation, so much more in common in terms of grappling with the struggles that are there before families.
There's once again a push to make outdoor dining year-round in New York City. New legislation has been introduced to eliminate seasonal restrictions for the outdoor sheds, which were forced to close late last month. Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani has indicated that he would like to see outdoor dining year-round. Here's what New Yorkers had to say about the issue.
I'm all for it as long as the sheds, are tasteful and done well.
And I'm glad they took away those sheds. Some of them were terrible. It really has to be the spot that's right.
I like outdoor dining in the summer and the fall. It's nice too, especially if you have pets or a dog like I do. So yeah.
Yeah, why not? I think you could do the heaters outside or I don't know, covered things, but everyone likes to be outside, fresh air.
I would love to have it year round, but if it's becoming an issue for New Yorkers, then probably not.
And we'll continue to check in with people across our area. Next up, we're going to test your knowledge of the tri-state region, so stay with us. We're flashing back to this week in history. On December 5th, 1876, a fire broke out during a play at the Brooklyn Theater, claiming the lives of nearly 300 people. It was the deadliest fire in U.S. history at the time, but as a result of this tragedy, the city was pressured to create new safety regulations for theaters. Finally, tonight, we're testing your knowledge on some local history. Last week, we asked you what New York City mayor was famous for his catchphrase, "How am I doing?" The answer, Ed Koch. The phrase, "How am I doing?" was the signature question of the former mayor, which he famously used to gauge public opinion on his performance. Koch would ask it while riding the subway or walking on the street, and it became an iconic part of his communication style with New Yorkers. Now, to this week's question. Who is New York City's youngest mayor? A hint, it's not going to be Zohran Mamdani. But don't Google the answer. If you want to take a shot at it, scan that code on your screen. That's going to take you to our website, fox5ny.com, where you can check back here next week to see if you're right. That does it for this episode of Politics Unusual. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Morgan McKay. Have a safe night. Extras up next.